We were wondering if it was ever going to happen, Clay, but it finally did. A changeling turns into a T-1000 and stabs a guy with his sword arm. So hopefully DS9 has finally lived up to everything that you wanted to expect from a shape-shifting race that can turn their hands into knives. Kind of like Carnage, too, I suppose, from the Spider-Man.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping Worf would turn to the person next to him and say, your foster parents are dead.
Just the Klingon should have just had a pint of milk that he was drinking from at the same time. Well, we're going to be talking about Chimera. It is the next episode of Star Trek DS9. So we're going to play the credits, and we'll be right back.
Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
All right, so Chimera, 14th episode of the 7th season, aired on February 17th, 1999. Written by Renee Echevarria, directed by Steve Posey. In this episode, Odo meets another of the 100 Changelings who are sent out to explore the galaxy. We're joined by Clay, as always. Clay, you've returned from exploring the galaxy. What'd you think of Chimera, and how are you, I guess, first things first?
I'm good. I'm working up my my 80s stand-up routine about when your woman catches you linking with another changeling.
Oh, it's so awkward. So awkward.
Yeah.
Sometimes sometimes you don't even link, but she just walks in and thinks you're linking, and that's even worse.
Yeah. You know, you say like, "Listen, baby, yes, I linked with him, but I love you."
Yeah, it's I've been watching a lot of the Deuce on HBO too, so it brings up that kind of the Deuce really explores the porn industry, but it has to deal with like the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and stuff like that too, obviously, which was devastating for some portion of the community.
I thought you were going to say it explores all the different ways people can be walked in on having sex.
It does that too. It does a lot of sex-related activities, much like this episode, I suppose, which is DS9 at its finest when it's turning things that you don't think are sexual into metaphors for sex, which is why this is the black sheep of the Star Trek family, I guess. I really like Chimera. I think this is a very good episode. I think this is a shockingly strong script that has come out of nowhere after about 5 or 6 episodes that did not have shockingly strong scripts. But what say you about it?
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was I still don't care for the relationship with Kira and Odo, but I think this is the best use of it so far because they're actually using it to say something and do something kind of interesting. And it features a speech from Quark that I think, if Roddenberry had still been alive, would have killed him.
Top 3 Quark speech, I think, when he's talking about no one is better than their genetics, and you can't expect too much from people.
Yeah. Quark is a fantastic character because they write him as just completely just intolerant of everybody, and they can use him to bring forward a lot of unsavory viewpoints when they have to, and it actually uses the Kira and Quark thing, which I also hate, and I think is kind of tacked on in general to pretty good effect as well, because you could argue half the stuff that he's saying to Odo is born out of his jealousy or want to push him away from Kira.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great Quark speech. That kind of comes out of nowhere too.
It does. He doesn't really have a reason.
He just kind of shows up and he's like, "Listen, we all hate you."
By the way, fuck yourself. All right, I'm out. See ya.
I don't mean like all of us here. I mean everybody with 2 feet in the entire universe are going to hate you forever.
I believe it's a holdover from the original version of the script, which was a little bit different, which had Odo more directly squaring off with Sisko about what to do. And I think that speech was originally a Sisko response to Odo.
Oh, really?
And they liked it. They liked it so much that they just gave it to Quark. It fits better as a Quark speech, I think, towards him. But it does definitely feel like it comes out of nowhere, and he just drops in and says that and leaves and says his piece and all that stuff. But
yeah, I think coming out of Sisko, that would have a much different feel.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you expect stuff like that from Quark, but that kind of thing, unless the tone was different or whatever. But
yeah,
I mean, I think maybe they lean into it too much by saying Changeling pride demonstration.
Yeah, that's a little on the nose.
Yeah, it's a little on the nose. But otherwise, yeah, I thought that whole speech was really, really good.
I think this script is sublime in a lot of ways, because I think that it's a rare Star Trek episode where I feel that every scene is almost telling you something that you didn't know before, and like it's really layered. There's so many themes running through this one, I think, and it does such a good job of summing up where Odo is at this point. Like this to me feels so much like what they should be doing with 7th season episodes, where this feels like you've basically hit the end of Odo's storyline and he has to make a decision at this point about what he wants to do. And they haven't been doing that, and it feels like it's a lot of treading water, but I feel that this one really builds off of everything that Odo has been. Like you've learned the development. He kind of mentors this other changeling, even though the other changeling has been around longer, so he's a better shapeshifter than Odo is. But Odo has developed this sense from living with these people that this is where he stands at this point. And although he still wants to go back to the founders and find the other changelings and everything, he is now conflicted because they actually bring in Kira in a way that makes sense and is surprisingly satisfying. But I think the script itself is just so layered about like what's going on. Like it's about being alone. It's about homosexuality, sort of, or like the loneliness of homosexuality and like a heterosexual society, basically, is a metaphor you could look at. It's about what you need to sacrifice to be in a relationship. It's about xenophobia and phobias in general. And the other reason I think it's really good is that it does the great DS9 thing of, I don't think anyone has a bad argument in this episode. I think that everyone, even if you say that Quark is kind of a bigoted approach, everyone who's against what's going on, Cisco included, there's a justification because there's no reason that they should trust the founders at this point. Right. They're at war with them. They're like, they can't just sort of let him run free and let him do whatever he wants because they're unsure of what it is. The fact that they can disguise themselves, as O'Brien brings up, is like very dangerous to the Federation. I just think that all the storylines that are combining here, all are valid, and none of them are stupid, and you go, why does this person hold this point of view? And I think that's a really good way for these scripts to go at this point, and I think DS9 does it well.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a good way to do an episodic episode, but still having the serialized nature and the larger story loom over it and play a part, even if not directly.
Yeah.
And O'Brien is kind of the one where, good old Miles O'Brien, he's always the first one to be a dickhead to people that, who are different. Because when Lars? Is it Lars?
Laas.
So Boston Lars. When Laas gets to the station and they're talking for a little bit, he says like Laas says something like one thing that doesn't jive with everybody, and all of a sudden O'Brien is like, well, yeah, fuck you, guy.
Nice. I'll be seeing you. Hey, I'll see you around.
Yeah.
Cut your fingernails. Yeah. I think they do that I think it's fairly effective. And I've been complaining about how I don't think that they use the ensemble particularly well. I think that this one does. I really think that this is a very good episode for everything involved. And I think that all the pieces really fit together. And it has the thing of all the other characters come back and they have their points of view and they sort of feed into it. And it also does something that I think DS9 did really well, and they kind of shy away from a little bit, but everyone's slightly antagonistic with each other. I think it's most obvious in the Cisco, Worf, and Odo scenes, where Worf is now the de facto security guard when Odo is kind of compromised, and so Worf has a very pro-security stance, and he clashes with Odo about it. Much like when we were introduced to Worf in the 4th season, we like that relationship between Worf and Odo. They're kind of the same characters, so they would conflict with each other. And yeah, I just think that what they did with this is super effective in terms of resetting everything and showing you where Odo stands at this point and where he needs to be to go forward. Yeah,
and I was actually Worf was noticeably absent in this episode for a good portion of it, and I found that strange because they did so much with the ensemble up to that point. But when he shows up, they end up using him pretty effectively.
Yeah.
By having him sort of, like you're saying, flip roles with Odo for a minute when Odo is compromised. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was it's First of all, I forgot about the changeling disease thing. I completely forgot about that.
They haven't been, for how important it is, they haven't really been focusing on it all that much.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the first episode in a lot. I mean, honestly, it's the first use of Odo full stop all season. You know, he and Kira have just been sort of relegated to side characters.
Yeah. Odo had his faith, treachery, and the Great where Wayun defects was an Odo episode, but that's the only. And I know what you're saying. It feels like I always feel that Odo's been a little bit forgotten because of the Kira relationship, and he's since the end of the occupation arc in the 6th season, he hasn't really had a lot of stuff to do with himself. He had the treachery faith episode, but this is the first one where it feels really important, whatever Odo decides to do.
Yeah, they figured out how to do another Changeling episode in this war story where it's essentially the only way that they can do Changeling episodes is to, either have one on the ship and try to kill it or try to insinuate that maybe Odo is going to defect or something. Like they sort of shied away from them after doing a lot of them previously when there was more stuff about Odo trying to find out who his people were and the Great Link and all that kind of stuff. They managed to figure out how to do one that is more in line with that and brings up some questions, some larger world questions for Odo that aren't just tied to the war, explicitly.
Right.
Which is tough to do at this point because clearly they've run out of. It seems to me like they feel like they don't know what to do with him at this point.
Yeah. I mean, did you feel that this episode revealed anything about Odo's motivations? I think that when Laas confronts him about the only reason you're staying is because Kira is here, right? Does that jive for you?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think Kira is definitely a big part of it, but I feel like Odo is a more loyal person than that, just to only stick around because of Kira.
Mm-hmm.
They have laid the groundwork for the crisis of self with him with the that episode. Maybe it's the Wayun episode, I can't remember. That ends with him saying, "No matter who wins, I lose."
Yep,
like the poster for Alien versus Predator.
When I found out our people were the leaders of the Dominion, I realized I had no place with them. This war they're fighting is wrong.
I can understand their distrust of humanoids. Why try to conquer them? Better to avoid them altogether.
You don't much care for humanoids.
I know from experience, they don't much care for changelings.
Goes all the way back to the episode where the two-parter where the Cardassians and Romulans attack the Founders in that ambush, and then Garak is torturing Odo, and Odo reveals to him that he does want to go home. And that's the link that Garak and Odo have between each other is they realize that they're both people who are alone and just simply want to go home, and that's where they kind of build that relationship off of. But I think they've I think it's fairly. I think it's good. For some reason, that line that it was Kira stuck out to me, even though I think that it's appropriate for Odo to only want to stay because of that. And I think that they weave it into the storyline. But I guess it's the fact that because the Odo and Kira relationship has never really worked all that well, it's tough to latch onto her being the main reason why he would stay. Although I do think it makes sense. And it would be, in my opinion, it's kind of the only reason that Odo would want to stay, I think, because he has hinted that he wants to go home prior to this.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't think it's necessarily wrong that if that's what it is. But I guess part of me feels like at this point, maybe I'm doing character work in my head that they haven't done in the show. But it feels like he has found a home on Deep Space Nine with all of these people. Like, it's not just Kira, it's everybody kind of. Yep. But again, maybe I'm reading into motivations more than they were actually giving us. Cause,
he has that the final speech with Laas where he says, he's like, you're wrong about the solids. They're not as petty as you actually think that they are. Yeah, I think, but I guess we're all just kind of dancing around the fact that what I think that they really do with the Changelings well here is I think that this is maybe the most effective episode that they've ever done about explaining why the Changelings feel like they're outsiders in a way. And, you know, they've always kind of just accepted that as like a tropey, like, oh, no, the Solids don't like the shapeshifters because they're disguise artists and they can kind of be sneaky and no one can trust them and everything like that. But I think that they do a good job of bringing in the link, which is kind of a wonky idea, kind of a silly idea that they introduced. But I think that they do a good job of making it a metaphor for being a minority and also making it like explaining it in a believable way about why it's important to them and why it isolates them so much from each other. And I think that linking it's another just praise for the script. Like they link that to the fact of like, this is how the Changelings know each other. This is how Laas and Odo will get to know each other. This is how it can be a problem to Kira because she can never link with Odo in that way, in that kind of like impersonal way that Laas and Odo can. And then it ties into the problem with Odo and Kira at the end. It's like, are they ever going to be able to really be together because she can never truly understand what it is to be him. And it always feels weird because Odo is... As we know Odo, he's just kind of a guy with a smushy face. Like he's never never not been anything different. So it's hard to really internalize the fact that he is so different. But I think that this episode does a really good job of explaining why the Changelings feel so isolated from each other. And again, it ties into the Changelings feel that they're persecuted, but it's rational that they're persecuted in a lot of senses. Here it's because of the war, but it's also because they do have a superiority complex over the Solids that seems to be innate, and they are dangerous in a lot of ways that other species aren't. So I think it's another point of the script, just bringing in all the threads and combining them, synthesizing them in a really good way.
Yeah, what I did really like is that they kind of showed how much of an outlier Odo really is to the Changelings, or at least I don't know if he's an outlier as much as. It seems to me that he is the youngest Changeling we've ever met.
30 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's 30. Yeah. A nice craggy looking 30.
He's got the soul. He's got the soul of thousands of years of age, but he's got the youthful exterior. He's got the face of a 70-year-old who says he's 30 after all of the plastic surgery he's had done. But he seems to be the youngest Changeling that we've met, and the interesting thing about that is all of the other Changelings, whether it's the founders who literally started a empire based on this idea, or Laas who has come to it independently, that this idea that the longer you stick around, the you're gonna learn that humanoids are shitty. Yep.
You know, like that was what I found most interesting, is that Laas came to that conclusion on his own, completely separately from the Dominion.
Yes. And
he doesn't have the connection to be he doesn't have the backing to start an assimilation body to rule the galaxy or whatever.
Right. But Odo,
he's been around for 200 years, long enough to realize that people suck.
Yeah. I mean, Odo is the youthful progressive of the founders, right? He's the one who's like, no, things can be different. We can all change. If eyes can change, then yous can change. We all can change.
And Laas is like, yeah, but how are you going to pay for it? What's your plan to pay for it, Odo?
I agree with that, and I think that a lot of it just speaks to Odo ended up in a situation where things were good. It sounded like Laas has a pretty bad situation when whatever planet he landed on and sort of was grown up, and he looks like those people, I'm assuming, on the planet that he landed on. But he also has an interesting point about not being wrong, where he has the shitty bar scene where they yell at each other, when him and his friends kind of yell at each other. But he brings up an interesting point, kind of an environmental message about like wherever humanoids go, they basically ruin everything, and he likes to be the buffalo or whatever. But after two generations, the buffalo were hunted and fenced off, and they all died out. But he likes them, which is done with a nice joke about Quark brings over the steak, and Bashir's like,
Well, you know what I found interesting about that is that as they were doing that scene, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about how how much that approach makes sense for an alien. That mindset makes sense for an alien.
You mean that the humanoids are ruining everything? That mentality?
Yeah, and I think there are probably a lot of people now who would hear that speech from him and be like, "Yeah, man, exactly."
Yeah,
but the thing is, it's ignoring the fact that it's not like, well, depending on whether or not you believe ancient astronaut theory, it's not like humans are an aberration to the nature of the planet.
Yeah, right.
Or whoever, it's not like the humanoid of that planet is an aberration to the natural order of the planet. Right.
Humans are a part of nature. We are not outside of nature. So whatever we do is natural, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. That's something that does sound like something Lex Luthor would say before he blows up.
It does,
India,
but I think it's realistic, and I think that's a thesis of the episode in a lot of ways. Like there's a cruel reality to this episode, I think, which is really kind of fascinating. I think Laas's position there is one of those aspects of it. Yeah,
it's overall, it's not a great episode for feeling good about humanity.
No, it's not.
You've got Laas showing up and being like, yeah, the natural world was great until the humanoids showed up and ruined it. Again, making it sound like that we haven't been part of it since the beginning of it. And then Quark is like, yeah, humanoids are going to hate everything always that don't look exactly like them.
To be fair to Laas, I guess his argument is that the solids should know better. But they don't realize, like, he likes the primitive life forms, he says, because they don't really think about things. They just are. They are what they are.
Yeah.
And I believe he thinks that humanoids should be better than what they are because they're capable of being better than that.
Sure. And I think that I think that a character like that allows you to write a really negative speech like that and have it feel true. Because, I mean, yeah, everybody thinks that. Who hasn't looked around and been like, yeah, we're not doing this right.
Yep.
But it is also it does allow you to write from the perspective of someone who would be extra critical of that,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're using that character to really, really good effect, and it does have a little bit of the of like the Highlander thing in there, where it's like the one immortal who's been around longer, who's like, yeah, everyone's just gonna die. Don't bother getting don't bother getting attached to anybody.
Yeah, it definitely is that.
How do you, if realistically, if you've been alive for 200 years, how are you not completely fucking jaded? Like even if it was 200 years ago from now, you've lived through 2 world wars. You've watched essentially like a third to half of the population be wiped out.
Yep.
The world population be wiped out.
But you also got a smartphone.
That's true.
Let's go with the positives here instead.
Yeah, but like if you think about it though, that's the last on your cosmic calendar. That's like the last 30 seconds of December.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yep.
Whereas everything before that, at a certain point, if you become jaded to the what you believe the nature of humans to be, that's all you're going to see is negativity, is in war and death and et cetera, et cetera. Even though television is a pretty good invention.
I like Laas because as much of a dick as Laas is, he's played by J.G. Hertzler, who's Martok, which is also funny too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
His facial structure looked familiar, but I couldn't. Wow, that's really
he's a pretty good actor because Martok and this guy are very different from each other. Yeah,
I mean their voices are completely different.
Yeah,
which is really interesting. Actually.
He says he was doing a Bill Shatner impersonation for Laas, which I don't know if that really lands. I guess it kind of he does. He talks with a lot of pauses in his voice, but he does talk totally different from how Martok talks.
Yeah,
he plays up his smoking 2 packs a day for Martok, I guess would be the way to look at it. But I like Laas because as much of a dick as he is, I feel he's justified in how he exists, and I feel bad for him at the end when he has to go off on his own, and like Odo doesn't want to go with him. I feel that both of them are believably sympathetic characters, and like you do understand why he would want Odo to join. He wants to create a new link. They can recreate the Dominion basically. With when the older founders get wiped out, they will start anew as a new link with all the 100 that were sent out before. And I don't know. I feel bad for him at the end. Like Odo realizes that he should feel bad for him too because he hasn't learned the lesson of love, basically, which is a speech that teeters close to being bad, but I think that the episode holds it together.
Yeah, I'm really wary of episodes that end with a long speech about how love is the answer to everything. You know, even though sure it is.
It's dangerous territory to write. I think to vocalize that is tough.
It gets hokey really fast when you have, especially when you have someone like Odo saying that. It's like, oof, this is weird. But yeah, he's sad. He's a sad character because he's been around for 200 years, but it sounds like he doesn't have the benefit of anyone showing him anything other than contempt.
Yes.
Which I think goes a very long way. I mean, that's why I feel like that's a big part of what makes Odo different is that even though he is different, all of the stuff that Quark was saying is true, except that, you know, he has been shown differently by a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's not just, it just hasn't been straight prejudice his entire existence.
Odo accuses him of generalizing.
He's only 30. He's got 170 more years to learn to hate people, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Odo still, he'll, if you're young and not a liberal, you don't have a heart. If you're old and not a conservative, you don't have a brain, is the other saying. So, I forget what I was going to say about Laas. There was one other thing about Laas, but I guess we'll come back to it at some point. But we can move into I like the metaphor for the I do see the linking is like overtly a sexual metaphor in this, where he doesn't want to link in public. He's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? I don't want to do that." You could
Could you imagine a different species and they're walking through the promenade and like Quark, like Rom just pulls out his dick or something, and Quark is like not here, and he's like, "Well, if not here, where?"
It's the same as Umox, although no one seems to care about Umox. You can do that in a conference room scene, and people will be like, "Yeah, that's some ear jobs that are going on over there."
It's very strange.
The sexual, I like the sexual metaphor because it's interesting, and it's a fairly progressive or modern take here, where there's really no reason for Odo to have a biological sex or biological sex drive.
Well, that's what's interesting about it. Is it's got a sexual component to it, but it's not specific. It's not like love. It's not like this is a hard line metaphor for homosexuality or bisexuality. It's very much, well, literally more fluid than that, I guess.
Yeah. More too much fluid. I think that there's I really like it because it is just kind of a stand-in for love, and it makes sense that like Odo has accepted a gendered persona because he's copying that guy who found him. So it makes sense that he would act male as he does in the series. But his sexuality really should know no bounds because the changelings shouldn't have sex to them. Like there should be no difference between any of them.
Yeah, I like the fact that he has a sexuality at all is a little bit questionable. Like I think you could argue that if he has a sexuality that skews heterosexual, if you can even still use that term, it's only because of his larger feelings for Kira and not because he needs to
it's only coincidental, I would assume. It's because Kira, Odo is a male because he's copying a male form. He loves Kira more than anything. And it just so happens to be a heterosexual relationship. Like if you're looking at the production of it, I'm sure that they don't want to have a homosexual relationship in the 90s be prominent in this way on TV, so they play it up this way. But I think it makes sense for the character that he just happens to be a male body who falls in love with a female character, and they work out that way. But
I'm sure if Kira was like, "Hey, I don't want to have sex anymore," he'd be like, "That's totally fine."
That's a lot of pressure off my back. Don't have to have those nights of wondering whether or not it's going to happen and sitting there sweating. I think that
just wait till I'm in my bucket form and then just dump me all over you.
He can be cloud form now. He's evolved.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Or he can apparently turn into the Aurora Borealis too.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about that scene, but I think that the link as a metaphor is just like I'm drawing the homosexual comparison. It's because only they can't, like, it's kind of a minority. They're ashamed to do it in public. They don't want to show the world what they really are. That's a big problem for Odo. And the fact that it's this linking thing, it just so nicely lays over that, where it can't just be seen as love and not anything else. And that the changelings are totally truthful with each other in a way that Odo and Kira cannot be, because the link exposes everything that you think to each other, because they are supposed to be one big organism, basically. So they know what everyone is thinking. It's shorthand for how the changelings learn about each other. Odo and Kira can never get there. And I think that the Odo and Kira thing, we can move it in that direction to wrap up, is just, thank God they had this episode to somewhat redeem this relationship, because the relationship to this point has been god-awful and a waste of everyone's time. But here, just using it as a bookend to, this is how Odo feels different, and why Odo, the tragedy of Odo is that he can never fit in appropriately. Yeah. I think they even do, I don't know if I'm crazy, the ending scene where he's swirling around Kira and they're having the like linked humanoid sex scene, her face seems happy, and I don't know if I'm the only one who sees this, but as it fades to black, she gets a sort of frowny face on it. And I interpret this as she's impressed by this, but she still realizes that she's never going to get it. Like, this is not the real thing for Odo. And try as they might, it's just not working the way that, like, it's cool and everything, and it's good for him, and she wants to be there to support him. But she's kind of realizing that they are very different from each other. Like, this is not what she could expect from this relationship either.
Yeah, it's like when your kid comes to you and shows you this amazing drawing that he thinks he did, and you're like, "That's great, sweetie." How many fingers does Santa Claus have? 11? That's okay. It's beautiful.
It didn't happen for you on the latest Thanksgiving, I would hope.
No.
No.
No. That's my entire life is telling people what I do for a living, and then having them pause and go,
Well, I mean, if the kids get the crayon on the piece of paper, it's a huge success at this point. So I'm fantastic with that.
I didn't catch the facial change at the end. I wasn't totally sure what to make of that scene. You know, I guess it's him being like, you know, this is what I am, kind of, you know, let me show you what I am, or not solid form or whatever.
Yep, the mask is off, basically.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't. I must have. I don't think I caught the face change. The face change.
I could be wrong. I feel like her expression is not pure bliss. I don't think. Like, I would not describe it that way. And I think. I
mean, you could chalk that up to Nana Visitor not knowing what the fuck she's supposed to do. So now put your arms up and pretend like you're, you know,
he's giving it to you real good. He's giving you
put your arms up and pretend like you're playing in a cloud of glitter or something. Like, okay.
She's a good sport. She did that scene well for how ridiculous the setup of that is, actually. And do you remember the episode where Odo got laid by that woman? He was like investigating.
Yes.
They wanted to use this effect in that episode. They wanted to use this effect in that episode, and they did not, because they decided that it was going to be like a big thing about Odo being a solid, like existing as a solid. Thank God they did not use it in that episode, because here it's actually symbolic of something, and it means something in this script.
Yeah, yeah, and also, I mean, I didn't even know he could do that.
No,
he didn't even know he could do that until like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, he can be fire, he can be anything. Yep.
That was a nice touch too, is that when they go into the when he brings Laas into his quarters, and Laas comments that he hasn't been using his jungle gym at all.
Yep.
Implying that he's not, that he's become very complacent with his current humanoid form. I like that.
Odo's house tour is like, if you were getting the house tour from a friend, they're like, and this is my PVC piping that I've wrapped some slinkies around. It's fantastic. If you can be like, oh, you've done
sometimes I I guess you could say I have sex with it, but that's not what I would call it, really.
These forms are very, very satisfying to become.
Very interesting forms. That's like serial killer shit. If you're,
it is. I've stretched out these skins of my humps.
Yeah, if your friend, if your kind of weird friend invited you over and you came in and he's like, this is my coffee table that I cover with all my favorite textures. And you're like, some of these shapes are very, very interesting. It's like, oh, okay. All right. I see one door. I see another door I can get to if I have to. Great. I'm just going to go, I think.
Work it all out in your head. No, I know. I think that I do want to stick on Kira thing before we wrap up here, but I think that it's an important episode, and I think it's a necessary episode for those two. And I think it really highlights the outsiderness of Odo here, and I think that that's a super important thing to reestablish at this point. Is like this has been the character's arc his entire 7 seasons that he's been going through, and the Visitor is excellent as Kira playing it. I think that their sacrifice is worth something, and it's just that the metaphor for being in a relationship is on some level a sacrifice for both people. And I think that's a really like wonderful thing that they mention here, where you can't, the relationship and such is a give and take like that you're going to have in a relationship. And you can't just be yourself completely. Like it's not all about the narcissism of like, this is the thing that I want and this is what we have to do. And it's a really cool thematic take on that, where Odo is sacrificing his utter happiness, his drive to like get the dream job that he wants. Like he wants to move out of state to California and get a dream job at this other place. And the Visitor is like, well, my family's here, we have to stay here. And
it's more like Odo wants to move out and like rent an RV and just see what happens.
Sure. We're gonna drive and find people just like-minded individuals, just like ourselves.
Yeah. Because it is a little bit like when Laas shows up. He's like, you're telling me you're 200 years old and you've never been to Burning Man.
I know a guy. We'll stop off in Pittsburgh. He's got great prices. Yeah, that's pretty much. I think that I love that metaphor of the relationship that these two are in is both about sacrifice. Neither one is 100% doing what they want to do, but because of how much they rely on each other, they are willing to give up what they consider to be a good for the other person. And they're interestingly meeting in a way that's halfway, where it's true compromise. Like no one is truly happy by the end result of this, but they still get through it just because of the depth of their feelings for each other. I think it's really touching.
Yeah. It has definitely redeemed that whole relationship angle. But I mean, redeemed is that's
too strong of a word. I think.
Yeah,
it was not worth wasting 25 episodes of time.
Exactly. Yeah. It still sucks generally, but this is definitely the best thing they've done with it. And I look forward to it not being touched on like this ever again.
Anything else you want to talk about with Chimera before we take a final break here?
Was he flying in space?
Yes, with
in
wings
like the form
somehow.
of
Yeah.
How do you... Okay, so ignoring the fact that they've never really established, I don't think, that the changelings can just exist in a vacuum.
Nope.
I guess because they don't have to breathe.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
But how does he propel himself through space?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that. I was like, it's silly that he has wings. And I was legitimately going, he should have a propeller. And then 5 minutes later, I was like, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense either.
They show him like wriggling like a squid or something, but it's like that wouldn't work either unless, he just took a running jump off of like a space station and then just kind of, glided through space. But
they missed a chance to have that alien from TNG that was the spaceborne ravioli thing that the Enterprise shoots and it has a baby. He should have turned into that thing. It would have made more sense. Yeah. I think that's it. Let's take a break. We're going to play a clip from Chimera. We'll come back, read some patron thoughts, and give our final thoughts.
They're going to extradite him.
You don't know that.
Yes, I do. And no one is going to do anything to stop it.
Well, there's not much anyone can do.
If he weren't a changeling, the captain would find a way to intervene.
Oh, no, that's unfair.
Is it?
You're starting to sound like Laas.
Well, maybe that's because I'm starting to see things more clearly now.
What is that supposed to mean?
Look at me, Nerys. What do you see?
I see you.
No, No, this is just a form I borrowed. I could just as easily be someone or something else.
I know that.
Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/the Pensky File. It's the best way to do it. A couple bucks a month and you get extra stuff, extra podcasts, all that good stuff. We're going to be talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger, which was the real ripe thing. We put up polls on the Patreon.
Oh, Schwarzenegger won?
But he's up like 90% to 10 between the other two, yeah. So he's definitely going to win.
Huh.
But those are the kind of perks that you guys can get if you want extra podcasts and the ability to control what we talk about. You can go to patreon.com/thepensky File.
I would also like to say that picking Schwarzenegger is in no way a response to the fact that we've spent the last 6 movies doing female creators.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we're swinging back towards toxic masculinity.
Overcompensating with our huge biceps. We'll have to pick his most gender neutral role as his B role, I suppose.
No, that would be
twins.
Junior, where he gives birth to a child.
Yes, absolutely. And as always, our Captain Tier supporters get a special shout out. Special thanks go to Andrew Churlog, Ben Douglas, Captain Quark, Cardinal Doomsday, Christian Michaels, Christian Pouch, Darth Mosk, David Beardmore, David K, Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, HH28, IC Unicorns, Yarpy, Joint Mango, Jordan Cooper, Kevin Reyes, Cal Barrett, Mad Courier, Matt Cutler, Matt Ross, Mike Burnett, Nathan Elliott, Neil Brennan, Nick Sergi, Robert Cummins, Russell Elwood, Samuel Custer, Grim Santos, Sean Spinobi, Tark Latif, Tom Hiles, Vault 13 Hero, and Will Yates. Thank you very much. You keep the lights on and the show going. And now, Clay, we'll go to patron thoughts. If you're
going to need to get to the point though where you finish that and you go, I read these names every day, and I'm tired of reading the names.
It's like when in the military movies where you get kidnapped and they like ask you for your rank and you just read off that long thing that you've memorized. Like you don't give them any information except for rank. I'll be able to recite the patron names. Yeah. I think
you and Cisco getting tired of reading all the names that are casualties of this
every
war.
Day. That's the other way to work about it. Patron thoughts. If you're a patron, you get to leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes. We read them. Norman Buckwald says, Chimera is the first episode of them as a couple that demonstrates the bond Odo and Kira have. How? By having the writers remember that romantic or not, Odo and Kira have a definite strong bond. Laas is more of a catalyst for this as Odo finally finds someone like him, but unlike Odo, Laas has turned into such a misanthrope that he would care less if he transforms a part of himself as a weapon who showed up. He would not be bothered. Either that or Laas wanted to one-up the alternate Savage Molly on the promenade and killing a Klingon on top of that. Kira has managed to show even more that this is finally the continuation from Sacrifice of Angels when she asked him, what about the link? Seriously. Even after feeling an ultimate betrayal in this case, that she's willing to let Odo go to be happy. She understands him more than any other character, and certainly anyone in the link will, and maybe even Odo himself. For lack of a better word, I'm not a fan of this term as it seems too new agey. Kira and Odo are soulmates. Whether or not they should have been a romantic couple, I can understand, but an episode like this totally demonstrates that they are two characters who strongly value each other, forgive each other, and perhaps while Odo may seem more like a lovesick, naive teenager in the past, it's when he stops doing that and he and Kira speak frankly that their friendship is strong. As for Laas... Go ahead.
Sorry, no, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
As for Laas, the writing did what it could to make him sympathetic, but considering his disregard for others' lives, if he meets an unfortunate end, I would find it only tragic in that he could not find something more. Odo is the lucky one. 5 out of 5. Edit. Just rewatched, and my memory of is grander than it was. 4 out of 5. Revision.
It is kind of weird that Odo completely stands up for him after he just straight kills that Klingon.
Yeah, they do a What's your take on that scene? Was that a justified killing?
I don't think so. I think I'm on Worf's team on this one, where he was like, he knew that he couldn't get killed. So
he was going for his gun. I guess the changelings can die by getting shots.
Okay.
And I rewatched it. The Klingon does go for his disruptor on his belt.
Yeah.
He doesn't take it out,
but
he reaches for it. This is
why we need body cams on all the changelings.
I know. Oh no! It's I was actually impressed by that sword scene. It looks pretty good for Star Trek's kind of stuff. I was expecting a lot hokier.
Yeah, I guess I was surprised that Odo didn't intervene more or
turn into a shield and just kind of like bash it away.
Something. I don't know.
No. Alex Bogut says, Chimera, as an immigrant myself, I always sympathize with DS9 characters as the entire cast are outsiders in some way, but Odo the most. The question of identity is never fully resolved for him or for me. The bond of Odo and Laas is like that of two immigrants who know that only they can understand one another. Living in the States got reminded of who living in the States, I get reminded who I am when no one can say my last name. I probably mispronounced your last name then. Or when people make Russian spy jokes. And likewise, when I went back to live and work in my former home country, was treated and valued for being an American. Just like Odo, stuck between two worlds, and just like him, no matter which side wins the war, I still lose. Next comment, Captain Quark. If Laas can turn into a space fish and travel through a vacuum, then doesn't that imply that the Founders can do this too? Do they even need ships? All nitpicks aside, this was a decent episode. Its take of prejudice was intriguing. Does the DS9 crew only accept Odo because he doesn't routinely demonstrate his true nature? The Founders are brutal, but maybe they are right to be suspicious of solids. I also think this episode is the first to do something interesting with the Odo and Kira romance. Namely, it points out the potentially tragic nature of their relationship. Maybe their love isn't strong enough to bridge their differences. Odo's inner conflict to abandon his life with the solids has been broached before, but it's better presented here since Laas isn't as objectively villainous as the Founders. My only strong criticism is that the episodes feels like it could, and maybe should, have come earlier in the series' run. Neil Brennan. Whose character has suffered the most from their pairing, Odo or Kira? I did think Kira until it was revealed that Odo has that weird framed picture of her besides his activity center. Who has suffered more from the pairing?
Who took that picture and with what camera?
I know. Look, Kira's lucky she didn't get shot, or Odo's lucky he didn't get shot with that rifle.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Man. They really literally dodged a bullet.
He shouldn't have been hanging on the wall. He should have picked it up like it was laying down. You know, in the movies when people see a picture and they flip it down so that they can't see it and be reminded,
Yes.
It should have picked it up from that state.
Yeah, where was the scene in that last episode where they sent out like the station-wide memo for everyone to turn their happy pictures down?
Odo just got shot like 500 times in that episode, but doesn't die from it. It's just like, what is happening here? Who do you think has suffered more from their pairing, Odo or Kira?
I think Kira.
Yeah, it's Kira.
Yeah,
Kira's always been supplemental to whatever man has been in her life. You know, Shakar.
Which is really surprising because she's not that kind of character.
Yeah.
And all of the men in her life are generally pretty sucky.
Yes, except for Odo, but for some reason the relationship killed Odo at the same time.
Yeah.
Matt Ross says, I remember when this came out and fans were all at Twitter about the possibility that Odo was bisexual. And while that does enter one's mind here, I think I realized that the Founders on an individual are essentially cells of a bigger entity, so I guess it's just masturbation. However, I feel this episode is in the wrong season. It should have been a season 3 or 4 episode after first contact with the Dominion. I also don't buy that Laas dislikes monoform so much. He's in the middle of their greatest civilizations. So although you can say space is big, the way Trek works, you'd think he'd notice what was going on or sense other Founders. I got a chuckle when Cisco says that Martok is upset, mainly because I was expecting a quick change on J.G. Hertzler. Otherwise, the Laas character is right. Kira and Odo really can't be together. The racism touch in the story felt clumsy to me. All you need is someone saying, you people. I choose O'Brien. All he needed to say was Odo was one of the good ones. All he needed to say was that Odo was one of the quote-unquote good ones. And no one questions Odo about taking a runabout, although he's under suspicion. Overall, a waste of time and felt jammed in at the end. A 2 out of 5 for me.
Wow.
I'm strongly disagreeing about this couple comments in a row that this is not a final season episode. Odo would have no good reason to stay if this was an earlier episode.
Yeah.
You'd be like, yeah, why don't you leave, I suppose, at that point.
Yeah. I mean, he's now seen both sides of the fence as far as the Founders are concerned.
Right. And I spent a long time with both
concerned.
sides of the fence, yeah, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's been given a alternative to going with the Changelings, which, I mean, going with the Founders, which would be very, destructive.
Yeah.
He's getting, essentially seeing the opportunity to do what he wants to do, and he chooses not to do it.
Right.
I think that is a fairly sizable character shift.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And especially coming off the heels of this is season 3 or 4, and it comes off the episode where he's tortured and it reveals that he wants to go home, it's too easy for him to go home at that point. Like the change has been his realization that he's better off here and not with the Founders. He's making that decision, as you're saying.
I mean, he essentially does get put in this situation earlier in the series, and he leaves. Right? He
What
goes
episode
back
is
to
that?
he goes back to the Changeling homeworld.
Oh, when he finds them at first, yeah, he goes back to them. Yep. It's only realizing that they are the leaders of the Dominion that caused him to reject them at that point. He wants to stay with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and this is so you've got him going from a changeling who is desperate to link up with or find and link up with his people to see what that's all about, to one who is now given the opportune version of that, and he chooses not to do it.
Yeah. Yep. Kyle Barrett says, I disagree with some of the other commenters because I think this is a perfect episode for the final season. It builds on all of Odo's experiences up to this point by having him come across a changeling that is simultaneously older and more experienced than him, who can openly voice his distrust of solids, but is also only just learning about the changelings and is passionate about discovering his identity, just like Odo was in earlier seasons. The episode solidifies Odo's struggles and pins down his mindset as we move into the final chapter arc. And while I have big issues with the relationship overall, I like that Kira is the why Odo remains, and the decision wouldn't have worked as well in an earlier season when Odo didn't have a personal connection to the Womana form. I feel the fear of difference. I like the fear of difference angle in the episode too, and that such a thing still exists in DS9's version of the Star Trek future. That scene in which Laas wants to join on the promenade feels, at least to me, like two men wanting to hold hands in public, but are scared of what others might think. Although Quark's changeling pride demonstration line is a bit too much on the nose. Overall, it's one of my favorite episodes of the season, but Odo should probably put that photo of Kira smiling away. Doesn't he know that there's a killer on the loose?
Mm-hmm.
Matt Adley, final comment. Chimera, the writers finally, for the first time, doing the Odo and Kira relationship the right way. After all the terrible Odo-Kira episodes we've had to put up with until now, this episode almost makes them worth it. I could relate to Miles so much in that cold open when you go somewhere and forget to buy your wife something and then desperately try to figure out something at the last minute. 5 stars, probably the second best episode of the season up to this point, after It's Only a Paper Moon. Well, you have to remember that Miles O'Brien hates Keiko, so everything he's doing here is an act that he's doing to save his personal relationship, his personal perception of himself.
It would have been a lot better if he had realized that he got something for Bashir, but he didn't get anything for his wife. Also, why does Fogg stop their holosuite reservation from being functional?
Well, he thinks that he's going to have to go fix the environmental controls.
Okay. All right.
But it's not that. So they are off to the holosuite at the end of that scene. Yeah.
Yeah, they disappear very quickly once they figure out what's going on.
Thank you, patrons, for leaving your thoughts. A little bit of swinginess on that one. It seemed like most people liked it, but there was a couple of lesser takes on it. But thank you very much for supporting the show. Thank you for leaving your thoughts on the episode. Clay, what are you going to give your Chimera rating on our scale of 1 to 5?
I think I'm gonna go for a 4.
Okay. I'm gonna give it a 5. Why is it not a 5 for you? But I'm gonna give it a 5. I think it's virtually perfect as an episode. Suffers is the wrong word, but we've mentioned many times some of DS9's best episodes don't stick out to you as like, clearly that's one of the best episodes. Like I remember that one viscerally, but I think everything here works so well and is so tied into everything that they've done and is such good work for everybody. And the thematic tie-ins, like there's so much stuff going on in the script. I have to give it a 5, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a high 4. I think it's thematically really great. It's not one that's, I guess sticking out is the thing that I'm thinking about. Like, it's not one that I would probably really go back and watch again.
Yep.
But I mean, that gets tougher in the show for exactly the reasons we've talked about a million times before, because like once things become serialized, it's very it's very difficult for singular episodes to stick out.
Yeah. You remember moments instead of episodes.
Yeah. But it is really, really good. I think it is, and it's, I'm probably giving it less of a point just because I hate the Odo and Kira relationship so much.
Some people said this is their 2 people said this is their second favorite episode of the season. Would you put Siege above this one? Siege of AR 558.
Let's just remind everybody, who's definitely not me, what that episode. Oh, okay, yes,
that's the one where they're on the planet and Nog loses his leg. Yeah.
I don't know.
I think I prefer this one to Siege ever so slightly.
Yeah, that's a tough call. I think this one is probably more quietly. It's a much quieter episode.
Siege is a better standalone. If you were to show somebody the episode, Siege would stick out as like, oh, I've never seen a DS9 episode. This one's better. Yeah,
I think this one actually can work as a standalone because you basically get everything you need out of this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you're showing someone an episode to like try and hook them on Star Trek, or Deep Space Nine, it's probably not the. Well, I don't know. Maybe it is, depending on what they're looking for.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm being very waffly about it because I think it's really good. But it's something is stopping me from saying it's like an all-timer. I'm not sure what it is.
Sure. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Patreon.com/thepensky is the best way to support us. Otherwise, all the social media links are down below. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Discord. Join the discussion on Discord. All the other shows continue. Real Ripe, we have Scream is coming out tomorrow with Wes Craven, our final coverage of that. Then we're moving into what it looks like to be Arnold Schwarzenegger after that. Badass Clay, do you have any updates on Batas?
Sean and I just recorded our question and answer episode, so thank you everyone for sending in questions. I don't know when that's going to go out, probably in a couple weeks, and then I think we're going to do another special episode a couple weeks after that, or somewhere in there. So I think it's going to be a bit before season 3 starts, probably not until the beginning of the year, if I had to guess.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to say? Any other updates?
I'm working on a horror movie podcast with Amanda, who is our co-host on Wes Craven on Real Ripe and Real Rotten, called The Rotten Horror Picture Show, which hopefully will also start sometime early next year.
Mm-hmm. DS9's almost finishing. We're almost done with that. Going to move on to Picard after that, I would believe.
We have to figure out how to squeeze in 3 Star Wars movies before the new one comes out.
Super big. Where did the time just goes by?
I don't know, man.
We'll get as much done as we can. I guess I can't make any promises at this point, but we'll see what we can do. And also, patrons wanted a Q&A as we made 100 patrons, so I said we can do something special, and people wanted to do a streamed Q&A again. So we'll do that at some point. We'll try to fit all this stuff in, but we'll try to catch up on Star Wars because with Mandalorian coming up too, which is unfortunate, just in terms of like scheduling. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Priority for me is just to get DS9 done a couple weeks before Picard starts so we can slow down and catch our breaths, I think, before we get into that. Although 1 episode of Picard a week is not as bad as 2 of DS9, at least in terms of scheduling and everything. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. And we will be back in a couple days with Bada Bing, Bada Bang, I believe is the episode. Let me check.
Is that a Vic Fontaine episode?
You bet your sweet ass it is a Vic Fontaine episode. I believe that's the next one. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we'll be back in a couple days. See ya.